بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. I am grateful to God the Almighty for giving me this blessing of being here with you, and I hope the time we spend today together will be beneficial for all of us. Certainly it will be beneficial for me. And I am very happy to meet some of the friends that I already know, and also happy to make more friends inshallah today. And I am honored to be with Dr. Jalali and Dr. Misbah here, and it's very difficult to speak in front of such knowledgeable people, so I ask them to forgive me. The topic is about social aspect of Islamic spirituality. There is maybe a kind of expectation that spirituality has to be more personal, and when we talk about social aspects, so maybe you think that it's a bit odd, but this is not the case with Islamic spirituality, and it seems that Islamic spirituality, like any other aspects of Islam, is very much social in its nature, but maybe for some reason historically that has not become obvious. So I am working with some people, some of the students and friends in Qom to introduce some of the forgotten aspects of social teachings of Islam, especially when it comes to spirituality. The time that we have today is very limited, so maybe we cannot talk about everything. Especially, I very much want to listen to your comments and ideas, so I don't know to what extent I can proceed with the points that I have, but it's not very important, to be able to finish. It's just to be able to engage in this topic. So whenever you want to stop me and ask question or whatever, please feel free, and I'm very happy. I start with the significance of social life and community life in Islam, and then a little bit about what is Islamic ideal of a society, and then we go to, inshallah, deeper to the concept of walaya, which is a very important concept for us, and how that integrates this social life. I personally believe that, unfortunately, Islam has not been witnessed by humanity in its social form. Most of the time, what we see during the history of Islam is that we have very good individuals, and no age can be exception. Even when some people are very perhaps critical of our age, and this age that perhaps is a kind of collapse in certain values or spirituality, but this is not our understanding, and we believe that indeed when we go towards the end of time, if you are familiar with this concept, we believe that we will have people that, compared to the people of any age, are much better and much more spiritual. And our understanding is that there will be people who are good, and they would be at the peak of humanity. And so this is something that maybe we can discuss about my understanding of what is the condition of the end of time. So not only we would not have shortage of good people. Certainly we are going to have many good people, but the problem that is, I think, striking is that right from the beginning of Islam up to now, we have had very, very few cases that we can claim that they are representing social teachings of Islam in a perfect way, or at least in an acceptable way. Many Muslims look at the society in Medina in the time of the Prophet as an ideal society. But I personally, and there are many people like me, that we believe that even that society was not an ideal society, although the presence of the Prophet made it very special. But when we reflect on the Quran, we find that there were many problems even in that society. Because you cannot expect to be able to establish all teachings of Islam within just few years, despite also all those wars and battles and lots of troubles. And therefore, you read in the Quran, you find that even in Medina there were hypocrites, there were people who made plots against Islam and the Prophet, there were people who annoyed the Prophet, and there were people even who wanted to assassinate the Prophet. So even the society in Medina, you cannot say it was an ideal society, or Ethiopia, kind of utopian society. But maybe in a smaller scales, we can find, a group, a small community that try to really practice every aspect of Islam. But my understanding is that we never had any case that you can say that this is a society that from every aspect is Islamic. You have always good people, good individuals, but to say that this is an Islamic society, I don't think it has ever happened. And this is very sad, because I believe the greater beauty of Islam can be understood when Islam is implemented in social life, not just individual lives. Because if as an individual you are good, mostly you benefit yourself and perhaps a few people around you. But if you have a society in which Islamic teachings are implemented, then the whole world would benefit from it. Even animals and birds would benefit from such a society. And this is something that I think, maybe I don't know, pessimistic, but I think even it's very difficult to say that we have organizations which are 100% Islamic, or universities or colleges or offices which are 100% Islamic, because Islam is so careful about relations between people with each other and between people and the rest of the creation, that I don't think any society or any organization, any school, any college, university, party, camp has ever been able to 100% or even 90%, 80% fulfill the requirements of Islam. So therefore, it's very sad that we don't see such thing. And I believe that if such a society based on Islamic social values as well as individual values is established, I don't think every human being with goodwill will feel that's part of that society or community. No one would feel excluded, and everything would be so well understood by all human beings that they wish to become a member of that society. So what I am trying to do, inshallah, first is to refer to the significance of social life in Islam, and a little bit I refer to some major aspects of Islamic society or community, and then inshallah maybe in the afternoon we go to the discussion about Walaya. Is it okay? What I've said so far is okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Something also maybe some of you are already familiar with is, one of our contemporary great scholars, Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, who was killed by Saddam. He was a very special person. In addition to being an Ayatollah and mastering jurisprudence, he was also a great thinker. And he was very much concerned with the need of the people, and because at that time there were many, attempts to spread Marxism among the Iraqi people and even other places in the Middle East. So he wrote a book, Falsafatuna, Our Philosophy, and he studied many different schools of thought, but especially Marxism. And also he has a book, Iqtisaduna, in which he showed that Islamic understanding of economy better than Marxism and capitalism even. And he had the idea of writing a third book, Mujtama'una, Our Society, after our philosophy and our economy. But unfortunately, Saddam didn't let him to complete this project. And it is also said that he said, Mujtama'una, as a book, will not be accepted by Mujtama'una, means our society. So he had the idea that if I write this book, many people would be critical, because for them, this would be not something that they are used to it, or, accustomed with. In any case, this is very important discussion for thinkers like Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr or Allama Tabatabai, for example, in Al-Mizan. He says that Islam is a religion for which society is very important, and every aspect of Islam is related with society. And also Ayatollah Mutahhari and other people. So you see that there is such an interest, but I think it's still not remaining for us, inshallah, to continue. When we look at the Quran, we find that in the Quran, God the Almighty sometimes addresses us as individuals, but most of the time God addresses humanity as a community, as a society, as a group of people, as masses. For example, you have about 200 cases in which God uses the term nas, which means people. And it's not even Muslims. People. When we say people, it can be Muslims, believers in other faiths, or even who have no faith. People who have no faith. All are included. There are about 80 cases that the term insan is used, man, but about 200 cases, nas, people are used. Even the very last word of Quran is nas. The Quran ends with this. It starts with the name of God and ends with nas, with people. So this by itself is significant, because we know that nothing happens by chance. When there is some, emphasis in the Quran by frequently mentioning something, there must be a reason for that. It cannot be by chance. When we read the Quran, we find that God the Almighty has stressed on two aims for our creation and for sending the prophets to fulfill the aim of the creation. One is purification. you find that one of the major tasks of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to purify the people. For example, God the Almighty says in Surah Jum'ah, هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. God is the one who has sent towards the Ummiyin, either the illiterate people or the people from Mecca, because Mecca was Qura, but there are different interpretations. So God has sent to them someone from themselves who is going to recite to them God's communications, who is going to purify them and teach them the book and wisdom. So these are some major tasks of the Prophet, to purify them and teach them the book and wisdom. And this is mentioned in several other places. And interestingly, we find that this was a prayer of Abraham. When Abraham and Ishmael were raising the foundations of Kaaba, they asked God to raise among the people of the land, Mecca, a man who is going to do these things, to recite to them the communications of God, to teach them the book and wisdom, and to purify them. The only difference is that in their prayer, teaching book and wisdom comes before purification. But in 3 places that God mentions, purification comes before teaching the book and wisdom. And the late Imam Khomeini used to say that this shows that we should first engage in purification of the soul and then in teaching the book and wisdom. Without having pure heart, we cannot understand the Quran properly. We cannot expect to be given wisdom. In any case, this is something that is available to every person. Every person can be purified, no matter whether he or she lives in a, for example, good society or bad society. You can be wife of Pharaoh and be a pure person, as the Quran mentions. You can live in the house of a prophet like Noah and be a bad person. So it's a personal choice. So you can be in the most difficult situation and still get involved in a spirituality and be a pious person. We have many people in the world today that they are very pious, very spiritual as individuals. But the Quran says in addition to this, there is another aim, and that only can be achieved when you have a good society. And that is to establish a society in which justice and certain other values that I'm going to mention are implemented. For example, God the Almighty says, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانِ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. God says we have sent all our messengers. All our messengers, we have sent them and equipped them with clear communications from God, with evidence. We have given them the book and a scale. Why? So that people establish social justice. And it's interesting that God doesn't say لِيُقِيمُوا الْقِسْطِ. God doesn't say we sent the prophets to establish justice. God said we sent the prophets so that An-Nas, the people, establish justice. The prophets are teachers. They teach us, but they expect us to establish justice. Otherwise, God can establish justice miraculously. This is not the point. The point as humanity must reach the point that they themselves decide to establish justice among ourselves. Okay, if you want to have qist, if you want to have a just system in which rights of everyone, and even you can say everything, is considered, it's not enough just to have some pious people, some spiritual individuals. Even if you have 1 million of spiritual individuals, it doesn't make the society an Islamic society. And this is, something that we can feel, by every cell of our body, that you can have many, many good individuals, but necessarily society doesn't become a good society. There are many, many other requirements and many other mechanisms that must be, looked into. There is a verse in the Quran that perhaps that also can refer to the transformation which is expected in society. There is a beautiful discussion in the Quran about the concept of light. And there is a whole system in the Quran built around this concept of light. One of the things that we find is that God says that He has created everything with some portion of light. خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَجَعَلَ الظُّلُمَاتِ وَالنُّورِ. This is something which is part of the fabric of the world, that this world is a combination of light and darkness, and after careful study, darkness is nothing other than weak light. So everything has a portion of light, but this is a relative issue. So in the world we have just different types and different levels of light. And then God says that people are either going towards further light, or they are losing the light which God gave them by birth. So there is some amount of light which everyone has been given, and that is enough to find our way back to God the Almighty. Then people either increase the light, or the light will be gradually weaker and weaker. So he says that he has sent the prophets to help us to move towards a stronger light. This verse that I am reciting is about Prophet Moses, ala nabiyina wa alayhi wa salam. And it is not only about him, we have this about also other prophets. But I'm mentioning this because I think it can have also social, aspect. God says that we sent Musa, this is chapter Abraham number 5, and his task was أخرج قومك من الظلمات إلى النور. Take your people, your community from darkness to light. Qawm, as a community. Whether Musa was able to achieve this or not, it's something else. Like, all the prophets were sent to establish justice. Whether they were able to do it or not, that's another issue. But the point is that he was not just asked to train good individuals. His main task was to train a community to become a community which is enlightened. A community which is taken from darkness to light. So, what we need to understand is that Islam is never pleased with having just good individuals. We must have more than good individuals, a good system, a good society, a good community, and then a good party, a good school, a good anything which has social aspect. Okay, now let us refer to some of the things that I find to be very important and outstanding characteristics of an Islamic society or social entity. One of the things that we find, and you would see that these are all related to spirituality. And if you want to have an Islamic society just by the help of law, it doesn't work. Law is just like, something to make sure that we don't go out of the boundaries, like, break. But it's not really engine. And the power doesn't come from that, it comes from spirituality. Something very interesting is that the Quran says that an Islamic society or community must be balanced and moderate. This is very important. There is no place for extremism in an ideal Islamic society or community or anything which is social. For example, God the Almighty says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. God says, we have made you a moderate or balanced community. The great Allama Tabatabai, who is a very respected and established exegete of the Quran, he says in his Tafsir al-Mizan, he says that wasat means moderate, means balanced, neither going to this extreme or to the other extreme. So this is the meaning of balance. And this has many, many dimensions. We don't have time to speak about this. What does it mean to be balanced? It's not only in, for example, politics or economics. It's in everything you can imagine. You have to be balanced. And it is in this way that God says then you can be witnesses for other people. لَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. So if this community is a balanced and moderate community, then rest of humanity would be able to benefit from them. In the same way that the Prophet is a witness for you. So your role model is the Prophet, and by following the Prophet and establishing this balancedness among yourself, you become role models for other people. They would be interested in finding the way that they also can become balanced and moderate. So this is something very important. As I said, I don't have time to go into different dimensions. If you like, maybe we can have a discussion. I have several, dimensions of this here. I skip so that we don't waste short of time. The other thing that we find, in addition to this moderation and balancedness, is that the Islamic society is a society in which people are united. Sometimes you keep individuals together by force. This is not a real society. A real society is a society in which people come and live with each other because they love each other. You cannot keep a family together by force. Can you keep a husband and wife or parents and children together by police? It doesn't work. In the same way, in society, it doesn't work to keep people together by force and just, we need police and, judiciary system to make sure that people, don't act like wolves. No, this is not an Islamic society. An Islamic society is like a family. Everyone loves his fellow citizens or other members of the society, and they go out of their way, as I will explain inshallah in the afternoon, out of their way to help others, to make them happy. And they think this is their struggle. They are not just after earning money or having a peaceful life. They want this, but for them it's more important to make sure that other members of society have peaceful life and they enjoy their lives.
So it's very important that they must be united in their hearts, not just physically kept together. You know, you can keep even enemies together by force. You know, in the court you bring the victim and the criminal and keep them together. But this is not love. This is not, you know, what a human society must be like. So God the Almighty says, إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. This is your community, this is your nation which is united. You have one Lord, أَنَا رَبُّكُمْ. So when you are created by one Lord, you must be also united. If we were created by different gods, then we could say, okay, we don't need to be united. Everyone should be united with the creation of the same Lord. But we are all children of the same God, so why we should be divided? And there are many verses of the Quran about the significance of this unity and how the Quran blames the people were a divisive voice, how Quran criticizes, for example, Pharaoh for dividing people, and how he reminds believers that he brought them together when they were conflicting before. So there are many things about this.